Hi, this is Pete from GS2. Once again, I have another project I'm starting here. This is a monoblock amp using EL34 power tubes and a couple 12AU7 drive tubes. I did another video on this one, oh geez, I don't know, about a year ago. Very similar project with the exception that the power tubes were KT88s. So pretty much very similar design, similar concept, just a little bit different handling of the output section. From the previous segment that I showed the schematic, I typically would take that and I'll turn it into what I call a build drawing. And it takes all the components and puts them, I'm going to put this on a turret board mount here. It's a 10-inch wide, or 10-inch wide. I think it's about 3 1/8 inch. It's an 1/8 inch thick. And I can mount these little turrets on there and put all the components and then connect those up to the, for the input power transformer, and then all the tubes and such like that, and the bias pots, and it's pretty straightforward, but it's just a different way to look at it. So instead of it, it's what I call a build diagram, and I'll use that to physically mount the components, and then when I put it in the upside down in the chassis, that's where all this stuff is going to go to. So I've done these before. The more I take time to think them out a little bit, it certainly does eliminate surprises. So continuing on with the EL34 monoblock, I've got both the chassis built. Came up with a different color. My wife suggested I do something other than whatever I do, and so we came up with this red color. I've got to repaint it. I've got another, this one here, this slot here with the grommets, that's where the output transformer's at, and then the power transformer goes here. I've got the choke in there. I haven't received it yet, and I typically just plop those down there, and I'll have the 4 holes for it, and then a single grommet for the inputs. And then these are going to be my 8-pin sockets for the EL34s. My can cap is going there, and then my 2 12AU7s are going to be up there. So that's what it looks like as it sits right now. I actually had the power transformers for another job I pulled. I had to give that project a little bit more current, so these will actually work. This I think this is a 372FX Hammond, and it's just perfect for the current requirements for a couple of EL34s. And continuing on with this EL34 monoblock build, the chassis out of paint, populated them with tube sockets, and I've got the power transformer and the choke in there. You can't see it because it's upside down, and got all the components in there. I think I just started wiring the power side of it through the IEC connector back here up to the on-off switch and a pilot light, and I'm doing the second one kind of as I go. So I've built this similar chassis framed type of monoblock for KT88, so I've got the pictures of what the other one looked like, so I've got a pretty good idea how to route things. I don't have to really think too much on this one. I just follow my build diagram. I've got both of the turret boards built, and so I'm waiting for, I didn't get the output transformers in yet. That for some reason I'm having a hard time trying to find iron of late, but anyway, it's continuing, and I'll keep on going at it, and next segment should be a little bit further. Okay, in this segment, just kind of want to go through it really quick. Got the blackboard wired in completely. Still looks kind of like a bird's nest, but it is all completely finished, with one exception. I've got a RCA connector that's isolated coming in that'll actually feed in over here by way of a shielded cable. I can do some testing without that. I'm not going to just put the power tubes in there and the drive tubes in there and then check bias to make sure it's where I want it to be. But for the most part, that's what it looks like. And next segment, I'll hopefully be able to put it up on the scope and show you how it performs. Well, I've got the power on. Nothing started on fire, and nothing. I didn't get zapped. So I put something a little bit concerning to kind of go through here, but I put a 2K sine wave at 0.5 volt into it, and that's my yellow form there on the scope. And then my output is the purple one on channel 2, and it's a little bit concerning because it's got a little bit of a distortion to it. Kind of see it's kind of angling off. It's got a little bit of a side kick there, and I suspect, quite frankly, that I may have to adjust the negative feedback. The drawing or the source I had been using kind of as a template for this particular amp, pulled that off a 16 ohm impedance tap off the output transformer. This particular output transformer didn't have that, so I pulled it off the 8 ohm, and that may explain the waveform aberration. You can kind of see it right here where it should be sloping around. It crosses zero. There's a little bit of what I would call maybe a zero arrow. It looks more like a triangular wave than a sine wave. So that's kind of why I put it up here. I was wondering if that was going to be the case. I can easily adjust that by adding a little resistance to where that negative feedback goes back in the cathode side of one of the input tubes. So, but so far so good. It's performing fairly well. Like I said, outside of the fact it's got a little bit of an aberration on the output side, and you can kind of see it better there when I kick the scope up. You can kind of see how I got about that's pretty much that's a pretty high voltage. I was kind of expecting that was gonna. You can see it as I bring down the input. It starts. This is 0.5 volt input. There's 0.4. Tends to get a little bit normal. So I was actually probably going into a little bit of a clipping phase there. That's 0.8. That's 1 volt. You can say that starts to definitely. That's probably more than I'll ever put in there. So this is back to 0.5 volt, which is pretty high for a input. So, all in all, it did start on fire, and it plus or minus a couple of things I figured I'd have to look at later. I'll check the gain on this thing to see what I've got right now. I've got a 0.5 volt input, and I'm at a 1 volt per scale output. So I'm almost 3 volts out. So that's a pretty good gain for this particular amp. So all that said and done, I'll probably hook this up to a speaker or two later on this afternoon and see what it sounds like. So all in all, successful project. Keep on building. That's what we do this for. It's fun, and every now and then it turns out like we want it to, and it didn't start on fire and it didn't get zapped, and that's always a good project end. See you next time.